Now, another student has been detained from Columbia University for protesting. Activist Mahmoud Khalil was taken into custody after participating in a pro-Palestinian protest. A federal judge had paused attempts to deport him. Earlier, remember, an Indian origin doctoral student from the same university has left the US after the State Department had revoked her visa over alleged support for Hamas. Ranjini Srinivasan's F1 student visa was cancelled and she had self-deported. Now, these arrests have sparked nationwide protests about free speech under President Trump. Take a look at the reactions coming in, what Marco Rubio had to say.
When you come to the United States as a visitor, which is what a visa is, which is how this individual entered this country, as on a visitor's visa, you are here as a visitor. We can deny you that visa. We can deny you that if you tell us when you apply, hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a student visa. I am a big supporter of Hamas, a murderous, barbaric group that kidnaps children, that rapes teenage girls, that takes hostages, that allows them to die in captivity, that returns more bodies than live hostages. If you tell us that you are in favor of a group like this, and if you tell us when you apply for your visa, and by the way, I intend to come to your country as a student, and rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student, anti-Semitic activities. I intend to shut down your universities. If you told us all these things when you applied for a visa, we would deny your visa. I hope we would.
I'm being joined by Gia Iyer, National Communications Director of the College of Democrats of America, and Matt Klink also joins us, who's a Republican strategist, joining us from LA. Let me start off with Gia. Gia, take us through what is taking place on the ground amid these protests. What's the sentiment among the students as of now?
Of course. So student population, particularly progressive students like the College Democrats of America, are very against the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, and we're very scared at the sort of things that are happening on the ground. We're seeing students being arrested or being threatened with arrest and their visa revocation for simply protesting. And while this is a very scary time, we are well aware of our rights as protesters, as individuals, and as students. And many students, like College Democrats, but also student organizations across the country, are taking steps to fight for our colleagues, for our peers, to make sure that people aren't unnecessarily being removed from their campuses.
Right, stay on with us, Gia. I'm also being joined at this point by Matt Klink. Sir, has the Trump administration now intensified its campaign to deport foreigners who now participate in pro-Palestinian protests?
Well, let's be very clear that the United States government is well within its rights to remove a visitor to this country for advocating for a terrorist organization, which Mr. Khalil clearly did. Look, call it a misguided young man. And look, I was in college. I went to the University of California at Berkeley, where protesting is a way of life. But these went far beyond protests. The propaganda that he's distributing for Hamas, the direct threatening of Jewish students in Columbia, the violence on campus, the damage on campus, that's not protesting. And he is a guest in this country. And if he had fessed up and told the truth about his views on his way in, it's highly unlikely that he would have ever been let in the first place. So this is not a First Amendment issue. If you are a U.S. citizen, you have broad rights under the First Amendment. Mr. Khalil has none of those. He is a guest in this country. He lied, and he deserves to be deported back to wherever he came from.
Right, stay on with us. I'm also being joined by Gia Iyer. Gia, now, this is the stance of the U.S. government as well. We had heard Marco Rubio speak about this as well, where he says that these sort of opinions and the protests on a campus have been violent and are against what the U.S. stands for, and that's the reason that such action has been taken.
So, College Democrats of America will always support peaceful, nonviolent student protest. We believe that a lot of the actions that happened at Columbia University fall into that category. For example, a lot of the free speech things that fall under the First Amendment also fall for permanent residents under a green card, like Mahmoud Khalil. I also do understand that there's concern, particularly regarding Ranjini Srinivasan's presence due to her F1 student visa. However, the claims that both Ranjini and Mahmoud were supporting terrorism are unfounded, as the protesters at Columbia have been clear from the beginning that their intentions for the protest were to call on Columbia University to decrease their funding to companies that were tied to funding the Israeli government. That includes companies like Lockheed Martin, like Google, like Amazon. So for these calls for divestment to be construed as calls for supporting terrorism do not take into account the true meaning of the protests. To that end, we still stand by the fact that Mahmoud Khalil's arrest in particular is unconstitutional given his status as a permanent resident.
Right. Mr. Klink, is it time now for the Trump government to rethink its approach and perhaps opt something that's less aggressive, as now there is massive outrage over freedom of speech?
I completely dispute that last claim that you made. There is not massive outrage. It's a small outrage by a bunch of ill-informed radicals who are supporting a bunch of murderers who killed innocent people in Israel on October 7th. So no, I mean, there's not a massive outcry. Frankly, most people are leading their daily lives and don't care about this person. However, what the Trump administration is doing that's tremendously different from the last 4 years under the Biden administration is that if you're going to rally for a terrorist group against this country and against citizens of this country, and you are a guest, you can go back and do it in your own country. It is not a right here. You do not have First Amendment rights here. And with regard to what college Democrats believe or don't believe, maybe down on paper they said that this was going to be a good old-fashioned rally where we were going to make sure that everybody does things the right way. It turned violent. People felt threatened. That is not peaceful protest. That's a bunch of radicals causing mayhem, and they deserve every punishment that they get.
Right. Thank you, Matt Klink and GIR, for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this development.